What you need to bloom. Once upon a time, there were 3 siblings. They lived in a quiet little neighborhood with their parents, and they were about as different as 3 people could be. Michael was the oldest, with long legs and fluffy hair and a brand new, wispy little mustache that he was very proud of. He liked to be called Mike, and he spent all his time at the beach with his friends. They loved to play frisbee and swim in the ocean, and they really loved to surf. Mary was the middle child. She dressed in dark colors and spent all her time locked away in her room, playing on the computer. She had friends too, but they were people she talked to online and almost never saw in person. She already knew that when she grew up, she wanted to make her own video games, so she was learning about coding and graphic design. Tommy was the youngest, also the smallest, and also the weakest, which were facts he was reminded of every time he wrestled with his older siblings. He didn't usually intend to wrestle them, he just wanted to be involved in what they were doing, and they, being older and so much cooler, wanted him to butt out. And that's when the wrestling happened. Tommy was not great at wrestling. Tommy was also not great at surfing, or playing frisbee, or video games either. If you asked his mom or his teachers what Tommy was good at, they would say that he was really funny and smart and always really caring and nice to his classmates and everyone around him. If you asked Tommy what he was good at, he would probably say he didn't know. He might even say he wasn't that good at anything. Tommy hadn't really figured all that out yet. One day, Mike, Mary, and Tommy's mother took them with her to the garden center. They would rather have stayed home and each done their own thing, but she had insisted. So all 4 of them piled into the car and away they drove. "How long is this gonna take?" Mike asked, playing with his sunglasses. "I told the guys I'd meet them for some disc today." "Yeah," said Mary, "and I have a rate at 3 and I can't let down my guild." Tommy said nothing, since he had nowhere else to be and his mom knew it. "We won't be long," Mom said. "I just want to pick up some spring plants. You can each pick one out for yourselves too if you'd like." "Whatever we want?" Tommy asked. "As long as it's not poisonous, it's fine with me," Mom said with a smile. At the garden center, they helped Mom load the back of her SUV with what she wanted, and then they spread out to pick their plants. Mike ended up with a waxy-looking basil plant. It was short, with sort of bubbly-looking leaves, and to Tommy it smelled like pizza. Mary chose a busy, long-tendrilled mop called a spider plant. Tommy wasn't a fan of the name since he didn't like spiders, but Mary claimed it fit her aesthetic. Mom explained that fitting her aesthetic was a fancy way to say it matched her style. Tommy looked all over and thought maybe he wouldn't find anything that was just right, but then he stumbled upon a plant he liked. It had long, crinkly leaves that kind of looked like paper streamers or maybe like those lasagna noodles with the ruffly edges. The label said it was called a bird's nest fern, and to Tommy, it just felt festive. So that's what he picked. When they got home, Mike headed out to play disc with his friends, Mary locked herself away in her room, and Tommy put his plant on his windowsill. He liked the way it looked in his bedroom, all crinkly and weird, and he smiled as it rustled in a breeze from the window. He didn't think about the plant much for the next few days. Tommy had decided that he wanted to get better at frisbee, or disc, as Mike would angrily correct him every time, so he'd been practicing his throws a lot in the backyard. Try as he might, though, he just couldn't seem to get the disc to fly straight and strong. One morning, as he was getting ready to go outside and get back at it with the frisbee practice, he noticed the lower leaves of his bird's nest fern were turning brown and losing a little bit of their crinkle, and something about it just seemed sad. He wasn't sure what was wrong, so he went to Mike to ask for help. "What's up, Broseph?" Mike asked when Tommy knocked on his door. "I'm heading out to the beach to swim." "Well, my plant's dying," said Tommy. He could see Mike's basil growing bright and green and fragrant near his window. "And I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong." "Well, are you watering it?" Kind of, when I remember." "All right, that's your problem right there. I water my basil a bunch, like every other day or so, and it's looking awesome. Just try that, and I bet it'll turn right around." "Thanks, Mike," Tommy said. He went right back to his room and gave his plant a big glass of water. "That should do it," he said with a satisfied smile. You'll be perking back up in no time." A couple days later, it still looked the same, so he gave it another glass of water. A couple days after that, he gave it another, but it really wasn't looking any better. In fact, it was looking worse. And when Tommy woke up the next morning, all the leaves were turning a crispy yellow-brown around the edges. "Hey," Mike said at breakfast, interrupting Tommy's worried thoughts about his fern. "How's the disc practice going? You perfected that air bounce yet?" Tommy said, feeling his cheeks redden. Mike had tried to teach him a special disc throw called an air bounce the other day, but he just couldn't get it right. He still couldn't even get a regular throw right. "It's coming along," he said, and then he immediately felt bad for lying. "Cool," Mike said. "Yeah. Hey, Mike, I gave my plant more water like you said, and now I think it's dying." "Really? Show me." And they put their breakfast plates in the sink and headed towards Tommy's room. "Yikes. Sorry, dude," Mike said with a shrug when he saw the browning leaves. Dude, I don't know what to tell you. Watering it works fine for my plant. Maybe yours is, defective or something?" And then Mike turned and left, probably heading to meet up with some of his friends so they could throw perfect air bounces back and forth. Can plants even be defective? Tommy wondered aloud. But that didn't seem right, so he went and knocked on Mary's door to see if she had any ideas. Mary had been talking to people over her gaming headset, but when she heard Tommy knock, she told them all she'd BRB, and then she whipped the door open and blinked out at him expectantly. Her room was dark, except for a little sun slinking in through her blinds, and Tommy could see her spider plant looking healthy and hearty on her cluttered desk. "You've got 5 minutes while we queue up for a game," Mary said. "What's up?" "My plant is dying," Tommy said. "I asked Mike, and he told me to give it more water like he does, but his advice didn't work, and now my plant looks even worse. How are you keeping yours alive so well?" "Oh, what does Mike even know?" she scoffed. "My plant is doing great, and I only water it maybe once a week. And you can't give it too much sunlight either. Just enough. It's simple." "That's all?" "That's all. Mom says I'll start growing mushrooms if I don't open the blinds more, but it hasn't happened yet," she said with a smile. "Thanks, Mary." "No problem. Now stand clear of the closing doors, please, and watch your arms and legs as you exit the bedroom." Mary stepped back into her dark room and shut the door gently in Tommy's face. This was typically how she ended conversations. Tommy thought about what she'd said, and then went back to his room and moved his bird's nest fern from his windowsill to his desk, so it wouldn't get too much sun. Then he let it go a couple days without watering, and it seemed to recover a bit. The crinkly leaves turned back to a rich green and kind of came back to life a little. Mary has really got things figured out, Tommy thought, and then he headed to go knock on her door and tell her thank you. He could hear her on the other side of the door again, talking to her friends in her headset. When he knocked and called out her name, he could hear Mary telling her friends she'd be right back. "Just a second, guys. It's my noob little brother again." Tommy's face got hot. He'd heard Mary say the word noob before, and he was pretty sure that when she said it, she meant someone dumb. Like someone who didn't really know what they were doing, unlike Mary, who was a pro. She's a pro at video games and a pro at plants, and I'm just a dumb noob at everything, Tommy thought, and then he turned and ran back to his room. He could hear Mary calling behind him asking what he wanted, but he didn't answer her. He was too embarrassed. A few days later, he noticed that the leaves on his bird's nest fern had started to wilt again. They were losing their fun, crinkly shape and turning flat and limp. "What am I doing wrong?" Tommy asked himself as he pondered his struggling plant. How could Mike and Mary's plants be doing just fine while his appeared to be dying, even when he tried doing exactly what they did? His mother found him sulking at the kitchen table, eating nacho chips and watching a cartoon on the small TV. "And what has you in such a bad mood?" she asked, sitting down with a cup of coffee. "I'm not in a bad mood," Tommy said, crunching his chips like they had personally offended him. His mom just arched an eyebrow, and Tommy flushed, knowing she could see right through him. "Oh, my plant is sick and I don't know what to do," he said. "Mike waters his all the time and leaves it right in the sun, and it's perfect. I tried that, but it only made things worse. Then I checked with Mary, and her plant is doing fine, and she only waters it sometimes, and then she just lets it sit in the shade. So I tried that too, but no matter what, my plant just keeps turning brown and losing its crinkle. I guess I'm just bad at this. That sounds really hard, Mom said patiently. It's tough when things that are hard for you seem easy for other people. Everything's easy for Mike and Mary, Tommy said. Sports and video games and even taking care of plants. Maybe something's just wrong with me. I feel like I can't do anything right. He could feel a lump in his throat as he said it, and tears began to well in his eyes. Oh, my sweet Tommy, his mom said as she scooted her chair closer to him and put an arm around his shoulder. It's not that you can't do anything right, it's just that you haven't figured out what your right is yet. Tommy looked at her quizzically. What does that mean? Well, we know that what's right for Mike's plant is lots of sun and lots of water, and we know that what's right for Mary's plant is only a little sun and a little water. That's what those plants need to grow and thrive. It sounds like your plant needs a little something different. Tommy thought about this for a second and then let out a little cry of frustration. Ugh, but why do different plants need different things? Why is it so complicated? He slumped forward and his mom pulled him to her tighter in a little side hug. Tommy, plants are just like people. We all like different things and thrive in different environments. Think about your brother and sister. Okay, he said, confused. I'm thinking about them. Okay, good. So how happy would Mike be if he had to sit in the dark all day and play on the computer like Mary? Well, Mike would be miserable, said Tommy. He just wants to be out in the sun and playing sports and stuff. Right. And how would Mary like spending all day surfing with Mike and his friends? Oh, man, she would hate that, said Tommy, smiling at how awkward that would be. Remember that time Dad made her go to the beach and she wore jeans and a hoodie even in the sun? Exactly, said Mom. Well, plants are a lot like that. Mike's basil likes a lot of sun and a lot of water, and Mary's spider plant does just fine in a dim room being watered whenever she remembers. It's kind of funny, she said, a little smile on her face. They both ended up picking plants that fit with their personalities. Why did you pick yours? Well, Tommy thought about his bird's nest fern. I liked that it was so fun and crinkly. It was different from the others and silly and happy looking. It was kind of weird, and I liked that. Well, so there you go. You picked a plant that fits your personality, too. She smiled and looked at him teasingly. Tommy gasped and gave his mother a faux shocked look. Mom, are you calling me weird? And they both collapsed in giggles. Tommy, Mom said when they finally regained their composure. Your plant is unique, and so are you. A bird's nest fern is not going to be basil or a spider plant any more than you're going to be Mike or Mary. All of us, every plant, animal, and person need different care so we can grow big and strong and be the very best versions of ourselves. We all need something special to bloom, and we just have to figure out what that's going to look like for you. She looked at him and gave him a quick kiss on the forehead. And your plant, of course. Tommy and his mom got on the computer and looked up bird's nest fern. It turned out that what his plant needed most of all was to be kept in a warm, humid environment out of direct sunlight. So it couldn't be right on the windowsill in the sun all day because that would burn the leaves, and it couldn't be getting watered all the time, or never watered at all, because then it would grow mold or it would go all brown and crinkly. It was a little tricky figuring it out, but once Tommy and his mom found a mini humidifier that Tommy could keep in his room near his fern, everything came together. Tommy was so proud. All of a sudden, his plant was big and tall and its leaves were bright green and crinkly, and there were so many new ones coming in that Tommy could see why the bird's nest fern had been given its name. The new leaves always started to grow in the center, and they came up in a pattern that looked just like a bird's nest. Once his plant had what it needed, it could be exactly what it was supposed to be. And it was anything but defective. The end. Thanks for listening!